Hello, everyone. Hello. Thank you so much for being so patient. I know it has been a long time coming. We're now a little bit late starting off this webinar, but I appreciate you all. Thanks for taking the time to join us today and for being here. We have a really, really good conversation, and I'm really pumped for you all. We had a few technical difficulties on our end. And so for everyone who hung tight through all of it and stayed with us, I appreciate you. And by the way, just so that you know, if you do, we will plan not to go over time. But if for some reason you do have to get up and go, this is all being recorded. So you'll be able to access that at any time. You can watch the recording at a leisurely pace. But until then, we have a really good program here for you today. We are talking about everything you need to know about launching a career as a tour guide. And before we dive into our content today, I want to take a minute and introduce myself, especially if there's anyone here who's new to the wonderful community, new to watching these videos that we do on Eventbrite, on StreamYard, through Eventbrite. My name is Beth Santos. I'm founder and CEO of a company called Wonderful. My whole mission and goal is to help make travel better for women worldwide. And in doing that, over 10 years ago, I started a blog that shared my own solo travel experiences, going out in the world on my own. And we've evolved into an incredible international community of thousands of travel lovers, travel content creators, small business owners, all with this mission of helping make travel better for women worldwide. And here's a little bit of a look at who we are and how we've come along over these years. For those of you who are not familiar with us, we have thousands of community members. We have over 50 global chapters worldwide of women that meet face-to-face to connect with each other, to share their travel stories. We have an incredible creator network with over 5,000 content creators that we use for marketing campaigns and working with tourism boards to help tell their stories better. We host a number of events, including the WITS Travel Creator Summit, which is coming up in May. We're going to Puerto Rico. We have 500 travel content creators joining us for a weekend of workshops and keynotes and tours around town. It's a really amazing event. And that Saturday night, it's happening May 19th to 21st, and the Saturday, May 20th, we're doing the Bessie Awards, which is an award show we created to honor women and brands of impact in the travel industry and ones that are moving us forward. And then, of course, we have our Women Travelers Festival, Wanderfest, that we hosted last year in New Orleans and hope to bring back again soon. All of these ways to connect with one another in person, but also online. We have a very active online community. And one of the things that we like to do is bring our online community together, like we are right now, to have real conversations about how things are going in travel, how we can make the industry more responsible and inclusive and equitable and thoughtful for women and for everyone worldwide. And so you'll see us about twice a month. We'll put together some of these virtual events for us to learn something new, to bring in new perspectives, and to have a conversation. And I say conversation because I do want you all to be involved, to ask questions. There is a chat going on. I know Rebecca on the back end is going to be showing all of your comments on the screen as you come in. We want to see where you're all coming in from all around the world, what you're looking forward to learning about in this session. And feel free to ask those questions, to bring in comments, to let this be, even though it's me on a screen, and our panelists on a screen, let it be a two-sided conversation that you can participate in as well. So we're grateful to have you all. All right, that's enough of me. You're not here to hear about me. I want to introduce our incredible panel. And what I will do is bring in our moderator, Alessandra Alonso, who is responsible for Women in Travel CIC. I like to think of Women in Travel as our sister community based in the UK sometimes. They're an incredible organization based on supporting women in the travel industry, and especially women who are working in hospitality. Let me do a little bit of bragging about Alessandra before I bring her on, because she is a leader in so many ways. She is the founder and MD of Women in Travel CIC, a professional with over 20 years of experience in travel and tourism. She started her career as a trainee in tourism at the European Commission and later gained senior roles in companies including the World Travel and Tourism Council and KPMG. She then pursued her passion for supporting women and diversity more generally by setting up a consultancy, Shine, and co-founding the Shine Awards for Women's Achievements in Travel, Tourism, and Hospitality in 2004. She is recognized as a trailblazer in the sector and an expert in gender empowerment and mentoring. And she's also a keynote speaker and a regular contributor to publications. Last year, in 2021, she was awarded the Journeywoman Award over at our Bessie Awards for her lifetime dedication to gender empowerment. She's been named one of 9 women transforming travel by Matador Network, one of 50 most important women in travel by Wanderlust Travel, and recently completed the certificate in diversity and inclusion from the University of South Florida. And if you are not all amazed by her already, just wait until you meet her. Welcome, Alessandra.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Beth. You know, it's just, how old am I? My God.
Oh, so over 20 years. That means you're 20 years old.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. Absolutely. I was doing it while still breastfeeding.
Exactly. Well, I'm really
lovely to be
here. And also thanks for being flexible. I know there was a time change over on the other side of the pond. So thanks for making it in and settling in. And what I'll do is I'll let you talk a little bit about the work of Women in Travel CIC and then introduce the panel. How does that sound?
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you for having us here. So delightful because we have been following you and your wonderful community as well. So we are really pleased to be here and welcome everyone. As Beth said, my name is Alessandra, and with Women in Travel CIC, we really are on a mission to elevate women through economic empowerment, using travel and tourism as a force for good. So what we do, it's really work with a wide range of women who are looking for opportunity to progress, first and foremost, economically, by gaining employment or enterprising opportunity in travel, tourism, and hospitality. We are based in London, but we work all over the UK and increasingly more internationally, which of course is quite easy to do now virtually. And talking of enterprising opportunity, of course, tour guiding, content creation is one of those things that enable women to pursue their interest in travel, to gain a career on their own terms, and to also articulate their own stories and narratives in a very different way from perhaps the one that some parts of the industry would like us to believe. So today it's an opportunity to talk about tour guiding, and that's when perhaps I can begin to introduce all my panelists. Beth, if you would like to bring them on board. So we have Claudia Zonzel, Nikki Padilla Rivera, Brianna and Stephanie Mengista and Brianna Thomas, and they are all coming now. And I am not really going to introduce yourself for you. I am going to ask each of you to introduce yourself because you have stories. So shall I start with Claudia, please?
Hi, everyone. So great to be part of this panel and amazing to see all the comments from different parts of the world. My name is Claudia. I'm originally from Slovenia, based in London for many years, but I'm coming to you from sunny Greece. I've been in the travel industry, I think now for 17, 18 years. I started as a guide back in Slovenia, Middle East, and around Europe. And in the last 17 years, did a lot of different parts in the travel industry, but particularly in experiences, so day tours and city tours. At the moment, I'm working as a head of city experiences for a big tour operator and online travel agent called To Amusement. We're developing tours in major cities around the world. But I've been working with Alessandra or collaborating with Alessandra since 2020, where we wanted to turn the bad year into something positive, and we started a pilot project teaching and educating some of the women that were part of her mentoring course and showing them how to turn their stories into a tour and showing them how to be a guide. And this is the reason why I'm part of this panel.
Thank you, Claudia. How about you, Nikki?
Hi, I'm Nikki. I also started as a tour guide. I was a tour guide in New York City for over a decade, and I was a tour leader abroad, which is such a hard job. I'm sure we'll talk about the differences today, but I was a terrible tour leader. I had no patience for people. And I basically since then have worked to work for guides and with guides. I do a lot of work promoting guides' voices and sort of speaking at the industry level to get them included, because very often the guides, who are the very most important part of the entire tour, have no voice. Or no say at the industry level. So a lot of my work today through the Global Guide Alliance and other work is to promote their voices.
Thank you, Nikki. Brianna, coming to you next.
Hi, everybody. Excited to be sharing today. So my tour guiding background is a little bit unique because I started off as an author. So I wrote this book called Black Broadway in Washington, D.C. So I'm based in Washington, D.C. And I really focus on highlighting the history of the city, specifically stories from minorities, people of color, women especially. And I started tour guiding because you may not want to sit down and read 200 pages, right, of a book. But it's a lot easier to retain information and get out and explore and see the sites. And also, I really started at the height of the pandemic as well. So at the time, people were more comfortable being outside. And also, it was another good way to share the history of Washington, D.C. So I love doing it. Like I said, it gets me out from behind my writing and computer, and I get to really highlight the stories of women and those kind of stories that are often overlooked. So I love this job.
Fantastic. And we love to have you here. Thank you, Brianna. How about you, Stephanie?
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. I'm Stephanie, originally from Ethiopia, from Gondar, northern part of Ethiopia. I'm based in London now, and I'm a tour guide. Yeah, I enjoy being a tour guide, sharing my experience and, showing my culture, my heritage. Yeah, that's what I enjoy right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. And yes, Stephanie is one of the tour guides that we worked with together with Claudia originally, and that has brought to London a very different perspective on the city through her Ethiopian heritage. And you'll hear a little bit more about it in a moment. Now, I know we are a little bit strapped for time, but of course, we want to talk about tour guiding. And I was going to come to you, Nikki, to ask you about, what is tour guiding? Can you demystify for us this profession? What's tour guiding all about?
Tour guiding, even that word, tour guiding is used interchangeably. You'll hear me say guide for pretty much everyone, but the industry standard terms, if we want to go real basic, are tour guide and tour leader or tour directors. So tour guide is a day tour guide, so someone doing a food walking tour or a day excursion where you're picking up a group at the beginning of the day and dropping them back off at the end of the day. It could be a fancy private car tour or a free walking tour. Those are all tour guides. And they have specific knowledge, right? Or a general knowledge of a specific place. So you might be a tour guide in New York City, and no one's going to expect for you to talk about Florida during your New York City tour. Or you're a tour guide in Paris, and no one's going to expect you to talk about the south of France, right? You are a Paris tour guide. Tour leaders, on the other hand, or tour directors, is someone with a multi-day group. So they're with a group, whether it's 3 days, a school group, or a 2-week trip across Egypt. They're staying at the hotel with the group. They're escorting the group. They know the basics of the country visited and the place, but they're not expected to have that really specific, deep knowledge. That's where a tour guide would come in and interact with that tour for an activity. So two very different jobs. Tour leading is closer to being a host, even though you're also an educator, and tour guiding is closer to being an educator, even though you're also a host. And they're very different, although many guides do both.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that explanation. And as you said, there are sort of the most common, I guess, is the day tour guide. So when you take someone at the beginning of the day or for a few hours and you drop them at the end of the day, which is also what Stephanie does. Now, when it comes to Claudia, when it comes to working as a tour guide, sorry, there's a little bit of feedback that I hear. I don't know that when it comes to tour guiding as a freelancer, as a person who does their own tours and works independently versus someone who works for a corporate, what are some of the pros and cons? Because I'm sure that there are people, and please do say so in the comment, there are people here who are thinking, well, I mean, there will be tour guides who are employed and tour guides who work for themselves. What are the differences? What should I go for if I decide for this career? Are all tour guides freelancers? What's the story, Claudia?
Yeah, in general, all the guides, doesn't matter if they work for a small tour operator or they are independent and they have their own little micro entrepreneurial website, or they work for a big tour operator or a big corporate company. In general, all tour guides are freelancers. Big companies, they don't fully employ guides. And in general, whenever you talk to the guides, they all say that they would prefer to be freelance and free and decide for themselves which is the company to work for. Now, even if you are a freelance guide and you work for a big corporate company, you have two separate type of guides. You have guides that are licensed, and usually, and that's more so for Europe, Middle East, maybe Asia, not so much for North America. And these guides went through quite a long educational or training process. In some cases, like Italy or Greece, they would have to study for 3 years and get universal education to get the license. And whenever you are a licensed guide, you can then guide in attractions or, big venues like Sagrada Familia or Vatican or Louvre, where you have that governmental or the traditional education to be able to guide. On the other hand, we have a lot of freelance guides that are just guides that like to show their city, like to tell their story, that show their heritage, and they don't have a license. And these are guides that lead tours that are a little bit more theme oriented. It can be food, it can be drink, it can be heritage. And more, even corporate or online travel agents are now selling these type of tours because of the customers. Customers are the ones who are driving the demand. They are telling to the industry, well, this is what we are interested. Yes, we are interested in going to Sagrada Familia, learn about the history and the numbers and take photos. But at the same time, we really want to get into the destination and get to know the heritage, get to know the community, get to know the stories behind these cities. And this is where the freelance guides that are more enthusiasts rather than the professional guides come in place. And I think this is something that could be interesting for this community as well.
Thank you, Claudia. And in regards to off and online, do you have a view? I mean, can you be a tour guide online and deliver your tour online, or do you always have to do it in person?
For sure. I think online tours started to happen and be very popular in the COVID area, where we were all, put in our houses and we want to travel through our computers and internet. And some of it is still present. I think just if you want to travel into overseas or in the destination that you're not so familiar, it's always good to explore that destination online. But I would say more and more people want to get out of their cities and their countries and continents, and they want to experience, smell, see, feel the destinations. And this is where, in-person guides come in place again.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. During the pandemic, there was a proliferation of online tour, and I'm sure many are still there. But also, my sense is that people want to be, want to be in person, want to touch and feel. There's some comments, some question on the feed actually about. Even themed guides, someone is saying, are illegal in Israel. They might be even fined if they are closed.
Sorry. Could I jump in, Claudia, on licenses?
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead.
I love this topic. Licenses are it's such a hot button topic for guides.
Yes.
Especially right now, as Claudia is saying, how it's really developing, we're having non-licensed guides. In certain places, it is legal to have a license to give a tour. Full stop, that sentence, right? A place like New York City, you need a license. Anyone can get it. I say that as someone who has gotten a New York City license. You can go online, you can find the answers to the test, memorize it, and take it. There's no barrier to entry to that test, but you have to have it. Has anyone ever checked my guide license in New York City? No, but technically you have to have a guide license. In certain places like Europe, as Claudia was saying, where it's like a career, I mean, in London, a blue badge guide, you need to write like a PhD thesis to get that. And that gives you, she was saying, specific access to buildings, historic buildings. However, in a place like London, you do not need a license if you are giving a food experience. Maybe you're not using the word tour, right? You're walking people around, and you're pointing things of interest. It's not considered the same thing as a tour, but there are everything in between that, right? There are places where you absolutely need a license. You have to wear it around your neck. There is no way around that. So people who are unlicensed tend to be working in cities where you can do that, right? And places like Airbnb is a platform where you can easily put your tour up. But yes, it is very, very country specific.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Claudia.
Yeah, Europe and Middle East, and particularly like Mediterranean. So we're talking about France, Spain, Italy, maybe Portugal, and then the Middle East. They're very, very specific where you can guide if you don't have a license. In some cases, as one of the community members said, it doesn't matter if you're running a food tour or a drink tour or a theme tour, you still need a license. Otherwise, you are fined and potentially the license could be taken away. But that, as Nikki said, really varies from country to country. And it's always good to know what are the laws and regulations.
Yeah, absolutely. I know in Italy it's complex, and yeah, there's sort of a very complex system, but indeed, I think the issue of experiences and sort of what I have seen is sort of the opportunity also to learn the skills of the tour guides to, I guess, improve and help you articulate. Even just your role as a host can be really valuable, even if it is not everything is linked to sightseeing or monuments or this kind of aspect that perhaps require the license. And
sorry, Alessandra, can I just say something? There is a trend now in terms of the guests and the customers, and also people like ourselves that maybe don't have a license, but we are so passionate about the destination and we want to tell a story. They do drive a change. There is an opportunity to, talk to the government and have them change these rules and regulations. It's just a matter of how determined you are, or how determined the community of, let's say, freelance guides, not the licensed guides, because usually there is a bit of a rivalry between the storytelling guides and the license guides because they invested so much time. But there are instances where the community really push the government or the body who decides who gets the license, they push them to change some regulation. So there is that happening as well.
Thank you, Claudia. And going on to you, Brianna. So I was wondering, of course, sort of diverse narrative. I was reminded this morning about that tech talk about the, you know, the fact that we can't just have one single story. We have to, you know, the power of many stories and diverse stories. And that's exactly what we are also through our own sort of tour guiding academy, as we will speak later. But for you, Brianna, sort of in forging and creating your tour, what has been your experience? How have people received sort of these diverse voices, this diverse sort of perspective? And, you know, have you found it relatively easy to establish yourself with this diverse tour? Have you had challenges to overcome? And what do you think sort of the future is like for diverse or diversified experiences?
I love that question. I would say honestly, especially in DC, very diverse city, a melting pot. There is that balance, nowhere near more so on the international aspect between the licenses. I am licensed, but it's similar to, like you said, Nikki, with New York. It's not going to be as strict. But I will say, in terms of diversity, people are excited about it. I know when I started tour guiding, a lot of times people were excited to book because they saw a woman of color telling stories about people of color. Throughout history, you have a lot of storytelling, but often who's telling the story isn't actually a part of the story or isn't their authentic heritage or origin. It'd be like me going to New York and giving a tour about New York, and I know nothing about New York other than I like to go there to shop and eat, right? So people are very excited about the diversity. I would say the challenges were more so about just starting out. Because I didn't know much about tour guiding starting out, and because there are those bigger corporate companies. So you have the big bus tours, right? You're really competing, especially in DC, between the national scene and the local scene. It's the nation's capital. So you have a lot of sightseeing that's specifically focusing on the monuments and the National Mall and the Capitol, versus my tours are more neighborhood focused. They're really looking at the community, taking people to these small Black-owned, women-owned businesses and 100-year-old theaters. So that was probably where the challenges came in, is how, as a single standalone, right, tour guide, how do I compete with some of these larger companies that have been doing this for years? But I found success. I think one thing that I would say as a bit of advice, especially if you are a tour guide starting your own company, which I did, I would say to get a good community. Like, this is a great community to take the advice, but also don't be afraid to team up with other people. So one thing that I did to overcome that challenge was I teamed up with another local woman-owned company, and we kind of combined our tours a little bit until I was able to really build a brand.
Fantastic. Yeah, I was going to ask you about what were the strategies that you adopted to overcome the challenges. So clearly collaboration, which actually it's a great thing because it speaks to women so much. You know, I guess that as women, we always rush to support each other. And so, you know, we can offer different aspects, you know, and if someone is slightly more established or they are also telling sort of diverse stories, they can certainly support you with that. Thank you, Brianna. And coming to you, Stephanie. So you brought a very different perspective to a city where, you know, people come in hundreds of thousands, millions every year, and they sort of tend to see you know, they especially early days, they come for the traditional British sort of aspects, but more and more, and we've seen it from developing your tour, that, you know, they also can enjoy different parts of London off the beaten track and through the aspects of a completely different sort of community. So my question to you is, you know, how important is it to you to tell the stories of your community, and how do people react to these stories? So when they come on your tour, how do they react? What do they say about, you know, the fact that they are in London and yet they are discovering Ethiopia? Are you muted, Stefanit? Because I can't hear you.
I think
I can hear you now. That's fine now.
Thank you, Alexandra. For me, the tour helped me to introduce my culture and my heritage. It's very important that we have that diversity and peaceful society in London, Ethiopian community. People get surprised when they get to know the culture, the language, the age group, how we communicate with each other, and how we eat food, what kind of coffee we drink. And they get very surprised. And I've got to learn a lot as well through the tour, about my culture a lot more. And I think it's very important that, I mean, culture is a way of informing other people how our nation or our community, Ethiopian community, lives here in UK. And yeah, I think it's quite important. It's the culture of language, the culture of the age, the culture of group of women, and you know, all that. It's quite important for me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And I want to tell everybody who is listening today that it is a fantastic tour. So if you ever come to London and you are looking for something different, please do join the tour. And I can't wait to come and do yours, Brianna, one day for sure. I will. So I'm conscious a little bit about time because it's 4:45. I know that we want to leave a few questions, and I don't know if there are any question now that people want answer to. Please feel free to again write or, you know, put them in the chat. Yeah, tips on memorizing so much information as a tour guide. I'm sure there are. It's work for sure. But what else would you say, Nikki? Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I was terrible at memorizing things. So I think as tour guides, we need to move away from dates. There's that sort of like old school mentality of what a tour is, and you have to give facts and dates and information. But Claudia mentioned it's about storytelling today. It's about talking about the present, what's happening right now. So don't feel like you have to memorize all of these data and things. If you're not keeping in your brain, you're probably not that interested in it. And so it shouldn't be what you're talking about on your tour. If you keep your tour around what you're passionate about, what you're excited about, yes, you need to know a few maybe most asked questions, but you know, you can keep those also on your phone. You can keep some dates. I would keep, you know, how many steps the Statue of Liberty has and how many floors the Empire State Building is. And you could very cleverly say, someone asks you like, oh, I'll get right to that in a minute, answer something else, sneak look at your phone and then answer their question. There's lots of ways to sneak in a glance at your notes if you need to, but I would say don't worry about memorizing blocks of heavy text. Keep to what you're excited about and you already have in your head.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I think, you know, because it's all about the storytelling, you know, if it's a good story, it has a beginning, a middle, and hopefully some happy ending too. So there's, you know, there is clearly a flow that will help you remember sort of your key information. Is it me making so much noise again with the feedback? I'm not sure. Right. So I also was thinking that some of the people on the listening today may be asking about the feasibility of a career as a tour guide. And I want to say this. started the Tour Guiding Academy with the support of Claudia and Nikki and Lisa, and Stephanie has also done the training. And this was because we felt that a tour guiding career, it's a very feasible option to sort of learn and diversify their income. And this is an opportunity, really, you know, to tell your stories and perhaps doing it in a way that fits with the rest of your lifestyle. So, you know, what is your impression of running a career as a tour guide? Can you do it part-time? Do you have to do it full-time? I mean, is it economically viable career? What are your thoughts around this? Oh, we lost Stephanie. It looks like. Who wants to start?
I could answer that one. I'll answer it from probably the easiest start, I guess. But I would say you can definitely do it part-time. And I know someone mentioned earlier virtual. I also see a lot of Airbnb experiences going on in the chat. I did all of the above. Definitely can be done part-time. I think the best part about tour guiding, at least from my experience, is you can set your own schedule. So especially if you're doing it freelance, if you want to launch a career in tour guide and get started, it's great to pair it with another company that's maybe larger than yours and just say like, hey, when do you have openings? I have a tour that I would like to join. Or if you have maybe they're already running a tour that you can just hop on as a co-host. But I think that is definitely something you could do part-time. And I will say for the full-time end of it, it can be done full-time too. I'm in the process of mixing both. So I think you should just start wherever your schedule allows. But yeah, even if it's once a week or 3 times out the month.
Yeah. Thank you, Brianna. I know that Jasmine has asked a question and I want to definitely raise it. Anyone else on this before we take a question? In terms of the part-time, full-time, do you all agree with Brianna?
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. There's everything on the spectrum. It's actually maybe a little bit harder to make your full-time career. If I'm perfectly honest, it takes a lot of hustling and a lot of years of building up a book. And there's a lot of gatekeeping to get that kind of work that is regular and yearly. So I think if you are looking at it as an extra income, that's going to be your most success.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I also would like to say that since the pandemic, a lot of tour guides actually left the industry. So there is a huge demand with companies, big and small, for guides. And sometimes I feel that they would also overlook if you're licensed or not licensed. Even if you don't have a training, they would provide training for you. So majority of the companies are now for the lookout for new guides because they're in desperate need of having someone to lead their tours.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. And I was talking to someone, well, we were in Berlin recently and we were talking exactly about that. You know, I guess Jasmine was asking about how tour guides are paid and some insight in terms of someone who has no experience, how you can start, what kind of education. So I'm going to ask the panel to answer this, but Jasmine, from my viewpoint, the Art Tour Guiding Academy is a good place to start. And we are going to send some more information afterwards. But let me, which is an online platform, to provide yourself with the key skills to become a sort of a day tour guide. But let me ask everyone on the panel, what would you answer to Jasmine in terms of starting a career as a tour guide without any experience?
I could start off. The obvious one is we've already discussed the license, the issue of a license. Just kind of look locally. Do you need it? What does it require? Kind of get that out of the way. And once you have that understanding, the education part, you should take tours. I tell this to guides all the time. Guides never take tours. You should take tours. I guarantee you, even if you live in the smallest town, there is a public building or a library or a historic site that maybe a couple times a year will do a guided tour that you can go and take. Hop on free tours. A lot of places have free tours. When you go on vacation, take tours. There's no better education besides the actual content. What do you want to do a tour about? Reading books and gaining your knowledge in that way in education. But to be an actual tour guide, you could just watch guides work. You could hop on the same tour again and again with different guides to see a variety of style, a variety of tours, get a sense of what your tour guide style might be. And I guarantee if you hop on a tour and say to the tour guide, hey, can I buy you a coffee, and ask you about what it's like to be a tour guide, especially if you're looking for a city specific, that's a great place to start. Obviously, walking tours, day tours are much easier. For multi-day tours, just start Googling, Google Trips. The big companies are, Globus and Intrepid and G Adventures. Those are the big well-known companies that hire tour leaders, but it's harder to find like the educational companies. So just start Googling and find the names of the companies and just reach out to them and ask, how do you hire your tour guide? That's how I got all my jobs in New York City. I was just Googling local New York City tour companies and saying, hey, how do you hire your tour guides? As Claudia said, everyone needs tour guides right now. So you're definitely going to get the time of day. But for education, watch other tour guides, watch storytelling, people telling stories. It's the best education you could do, I think.
Thank you, Nikki. Anyone else?
There is a lot of on YouTube, for sure. Do research on YouTube. And as Alessandra said, if you want to dive in straight away and have everything very concise, there is a tour guiding academy from Women in Travel.
Thank you. Brianna, any suggestion from you?
I think all of those are great points to really get started. I would just add one bit of advice for launching a career in tour guiding is you do want to know where you are. Mapping and geography is super important. So training with other tour guides, not just like taking their tours, you definitely want to do to see the style, see the pace. I know when I started, I was like sweating bullets, so nervous. And it was sites that I knew well, but I was still nervous talking about it. But I think another good point of that is also learning the area. When you're creating a tour route, especially walking, but even on a bus, you really need to make sure you're getting from place to place in a good amount of time. Is there going to be construction that day? Is this street blocked off? All of those things come into play when you're actually giving a tour. And sometimes you just think so much on the content and getting your script and your words together that the actual directions can be forgotten. And there's nothing worse than having a tour where you're just kind of like walking all over the place. So that's another tip I would say, to really try to study that mapping and geography. And Google Maps is a great tool too.
Yeah. Stephanie, what was the most helpful way for you to start? And what would you recommend?
Okay. I think the training was quite important. The tour guide training we've done with Women in Travel in the Urban Adventure. And also be passionate about what you're learning. Take the training very serious and also be passionate, because for me it was passionate, because the passion for my country, for my culture, that made me to be like, I would say, very successful tour guide so far. So like passion is always the key, and it will lead you to success. I think so.
Oh, this is so good. I absolutely agree. And I totally subscribe to this. I think passion is fundamental in storytelling. And if you are, if you are entertaining and sort of hosting people, that passion is going to be the difference between you and someone else. I think, the way you deliver your tour. And to the point that some of the other panelists have made, it's interesting. Then we took 5 ladies to do Stephanie tour exactly as the sort of the first point of their training. The first thing they did was to go on Stephanie tour and start thinking about how is she doing this? What is she doing? What story is she telling? And absolutely, that is really, really valuable. There's another question about a reasonable price point for 2 to 3 hours. And what is a reasonable group size? I think that is probably very different from country to country, but is there anyone who wants to answer that?
It's depending what you do, really, what kind of tour you do, isn't it?
Yeah, there is.
Like for me, yeah.
Go ahead, Stephanie.
Okay, so for me, it was like walking tour, 2.5-hour walking tour, and food testing, taste of coffee, Ethiopian coffee. So the price was quite reasonable, I would say that, even though I don't set the price, but it's okay, it's not bad. But it's depending what you do. Again, if you're traveling, like if you have to pay a lot, then you have to make a decision. It's depending how much you spend it, really. The price depends on how much you're going to spend.
So I guess you are talking about the inclusion, is whether you are including food, whether you are including drinks, and what else is included with your tour. Absolutely. Nikki, did you want to say something?
Oh, no, but I could add that just, again, the researching, it is, as you said, very, very specific to the type of tour. Are you doing a public tour where anyone can join, and so it's a per person price? Are you doing a private tour where someone is just, hiring you to give them that tour, and then that's a lump sum for the 3-hour tour in this example? But just having a look around your city online and seeing what other people are charging, what kind of tours, will give you a pretty good idea.
Yeah. Comparing to competition, but also taking consideration if you're just starting with tour guiding, to make yourself comfortable and not take too much. Maybe start with small group tours, maybe have 5 people, because the minute you start 10, 12, 20 people, it can get overwhelming. And of course, it's all about the costing, depending, are you running a tour that is just your time, so you don't have any inclusions? So you determine what would be per hour fee for yourself, or if you're including any food or drink or any entrance fees. If you're going to a museum or something, you need to add it all up and then calculate, as Nikki said, if you're doing a private tour, very quickly you can break even and cover all the costs. But if you're doing a small group tour where anyone can join, and if you're, for example, loading your tour and selling your tour on Airbnb, you need to run the tour even if it's 1 passenger, meaning that usually around 1 to 3 people on your tour, you are not going to break even, and it's going to basically take you into minus. So there are some calculations and understanding how to price your tour involved, depending where you are, what are the inclusions, what would be your fee, and then also in compared to competition, because we can price our tour, $100, $150, but if no one wants to pay that price, then what's the point?
Yeah, absolutely. Wise words. So it is the hour. It's just gone the hour. I wonder if you can all leave us with one final quick run around, your final word of wisdom, takeaway that anyone out there listening into this can implement. What would you say? Let's start with Brianna.
I would say really whatever tour you decide to do, whether it's food or history, cultural experience, it can even be music. I do some music tours too. I would say to just make sure you're telling a story that you feel connected to, because you're always going to be your best storyteller when it's coming from you and maybe your experiences or things that you just like to do. That would be my words of wisdom. Don't go and do a tour that you like. I'm allergic to shellfish, so if I did a food tour on the water about seafood, that'd be a terrible idea. But I think you should just tell stories that you feel connected to, stories that you're passionate about, as Stephanie mentioned, and you'll be successful because people will be drawn to that authenticity.
Thank you, Brianna. Nikki.
I would say if you're just starting out, you're not sure where to start, to not think of tour guiding as a specific skill, like a training to be a specific tour guide. It's a well-rounded person. It's someone who's good at public speaking. It's someone who's good at juggling multiple things, someone who's good at dealing with emergencies. You show up to the coffee shop, it's closed. What do you do? How do you think on your feet? There's all these different skills that make a good tour guide. So it's less about specifically learning how to do that thing that a tour guide does and learning all of the different elements of a tour guide job.
Thank you, Nikki. Claudia?
I would also say what Brianna said. It's about passion, and the passion really comes through. It doesn't matter whatever tour you're guiding, or if it's about attraction, history, food, drink, theme. If you include part of yourself that you can add, that really comes through, and it makes it a really great tour.
Thank you, Claudia. And Stephanie, the last word of wisdom from you. You talk about passion already. Anything else that you think matters?
Yes, of course. If you're doing the tour guide training, take it serious, because it will help you. It definitely help. And if you decide to do the tour guide training and to become a tour guide, make sure you have a plan A and plan B, because some places you go might be closed, might be not available anymore. You must have another plan. So take a plan A and plan B always. Yeah. And get to know your story, get connected with the people, be passionate about it. That's all really. That's what I learned so far.
Thank you, Stephanie, and very true as well. So I hope you found this relevant and interesting. There is a lot of knowledge on this panel, and I thank you all very much. I think we could continue for hours, but unfortunately, we only have so much time. So thank you to everyone who's been listening in. And hopefully this is also being recorded for those who are interested and want to hear it again or couldn't make it today. And please do connect with all of us at womenintravelcic.com, and everyone else. We will be sharing some information further to this panel, and wishing you all a very good rest of the week. And my word for, I guess my last word of wisdom is go for it.
Thank you all so much. Thanks, Alessandra. It was a pleasure hearing all of this, and we will see you all next time.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you. Take care.